We are going to build, baby, build.
All this week, we're looking at the federal government's plans to address housing. And this is a series we're calling Built to Last. Can Canada build its way out of the housing crisis? The federal Liberals' housing plan is to build 500,000 homes per year. That's between the public and private sector, and to double the current pace of building. So to do that, they would create, they say, a new government entity called Build Canada Homes. So that would act as a developer. For first-time home buyers, they would be eliminating the GST on new homes under $1 million. They plan to make it easier for private developers and builders to build housing with financial incentives and reducing red tape. So it is worth noting that the federal government has not yet expanded on their housing plans since the election campaign. So today, here with us today, we have two experts on housing. Patrick Condon is a professor of urban design at UBC and the author of the book Broken City, Land Speculation, Inequality, and Urban Crisis. Patrick, good afternoon. Thanks for being here.
It's great to be here, Gloria.
And Tom Davidoff joins us as well. Tom is an associate professor at the Sauder School of Business and director at the Center for Urban Economics and Real Estate. Tom Davidoff, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello to you and to Patrick.
Okay. Now, Patrick, we're going to drill down on some details shortly, but can I just briefly hear off the top here your thoughts on the big picture, I guess? You know, what do you make of what you've heard from Mark Carney so far about the government's plans for housing?
Unfortunately, it's, as far as I'm concerned, more of the same, because what you've just mentioned is essentially subsidies and supports to market housing developers, essentially. And the subsidies are taxpayer subsidies that are going to support private developers. And I and others, particularly the 27 others who signed a letter to Prime Minister Carney a few days ago, have all participated in the creation of this city over the decades. I'm 75 years old, just turned 75. And for many decades, I and those same others have been working to add density to the city of Vancouver, and indeed throughout the region. And it was all done in the hopes that we could create a great city, which I think in many respects we have collectively done between those worthies and the citizens of the city. And also the expectation that by adding a whole lot of housing, the prices would go down in time, or at least stabilize. The city of Vancouver has exceeded any other center city's performance throughout North America in adding density, tripling the number of housing units within city limits. No other city has done the same, and yet the reward in our city has been an explosion of housing prices. So it seems odd to me and others that the response of the federal government is to essentially say that the reason why housing costs too much is we're not building too much, we're not building enough, when the city of Vancouver has built more than any other center city in North America, and our reward has been the highest housing prices in the city. I'm in favor of density, of course, but I think it's misguided to think that just subsidizing the private market is the way to go.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. And Tom Davidoff, what do you think about that? Let's just, get into the federal government's ambitious promises right now on housing.
Well, of course, building more homes is very important for affordability. What matters for the price and rent of housing is how many homes there are relative to how many people are looking, and we see that. Immigration has been greatly curtailed at the same time that a lot of rental housing and in Toronto condos are coming on the market. And as a result, because there's more homes per person looking now, we're seeing rents fall and prices fall. So if we continue to build, maybe we can pick up immigration again, which I think would be a very good thing. In terms of the government's objectives, 500,000 homes a year, I think is fairly unrealistic, but it's great to dream big. In terms of public involvement, there's two things I like about the federal plan. Number one is investing in prefab housing. I don't know that that'll work. People will have been talking, certainly as long as I've been around, and probably as long as Patrick has been around, about the idea that prefab housing is going to be the miracle cure to housing costs, but it makes sense for there to be federal investment in something the private sector probably wouldn't invest in. And then the red tape you mentioned, most land in Canada where you're allowed to build homes is probably still single family only. We need denser housing, as Patrick says, because when you allow denser housing, you can make more affordable housing by making better use of limited land.
Okay. Well, thank you to both of you for laying out your thoughts and your initial arguments. And Patrick, I want to go back to the letter that you mentioned, this open letter to the Prime Minister that came out this week, along with 26 other housing experts, including, former planner Larry Beasley, Andy Yan, yourself. You bring out some important points in that. Can you just outline those for us and why it was important for you to sign this letter?
Well, the points sort of reiterate what I've just said, that the supposition that the reason why housing costs too much is that we're not building enough is patently false. And the best demonstration almost in the world is Vancouver, where you've tripled the number of housing units and that we've been rewarded with the highest prices for housing when measured against average incomes.
But what do you make of what Tom just had to say? With all of these new apartments and condos in our midst, that prices are coming down and that rents are coming down.
I disagree with what he said. We haven't seen substantial reductions in prices and rents, and we've seen those same things globally. The driver for those reductions and the additional housing in the market right now is a consequence of high mortgage rates, and the industry basically gotten caught in the bind of not being able to basically pay back the costs, which is what the federal the federal proposal suggests the solution to that is to give private developers even more money. Well, that is throwing good money after bad. And in direct answer to your question, Gloria, the problem really is that all these inducements are making our land prices go completely sky high. And the more that we subsidize this situation, the higher those land prices go. And to blame zoning or permitting processes or red tape generally as the reason why our housing costs too much is foolish, and the science and the research certainly does not support that. But the best case again is that zoning and planning have been used in the city of Vancouver to triple our density, and it has not led to more affordability.
Okay, I can see out of the corner of my eye Tom Davidoff on the screen there, shaking his head rather emphatically. So why don't you jump in?
I'm shaking my head too.
Why don't you jump in here, Tom?
Yeah, almost everything Patrick just said respectfully doesn't make sense. So first of all, trying to say that we've built a lot there and yet prices have risen. Therefore, the more you produce, that doesn't reduce prices. Maybe it raises prices. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's been more coffee production than can of sardine production in terms of growth over the last 50 years. And yet I bet coffee bean price growth has been greater than sardine price growth. Why? Because there's been growth in demand for coffee and not for sardines. And that's why people are producing more. Why has Vancouver seen so much extra supply? Because of demand. So you can't compare cities and say, oh, one's added a lot of quantity and prices are higher, and another that's stagnated, like Buffalo, New York. Well, of course, nobody's building anything in Buffalo because nobody wants to be there, which is why prices are low. That doesn't answer the question of if you build more, does that affect prices? That's point one. Point two is it's a silly argument to compare, first of all, the city of Vancouver only to metro areas or central cities. For example, in most of the US and in Canada as well, most of the growth happens in the fringe of the metro area and the suburbs. So I believe the city of Atlanta has lost population over the last 50 years, but metro Atlanta, including the suburbs, has grown spectacularly. So the correct comparison would be metro Vancouver, the full housing market, to metro Atlanta or metro Dallas. And then Patrick's claim that we've seen more supply growth in Vancouver than elsewhere, I'm almost certain would be incorrect. So, and then, people look all the time and compare San Francisco and Boston and New York and LA with low quantity growth and high price growth to Dallas, Atlanta, Houston, other markets that have had more quantity growth and less price growth. So if you want to, use the Vancouver example, get the level of analysis right, city versus metro, and then you have to use all the data points. And then, the data looks pretty good that adding quantity lowers prices. There's plenty of evidence before us, as I said, with the reduction in immigration leading to lower prices and rents. It stands to reason that adding supply holding population constant would do the same. And Patrick just hasn't undertaken that experiment because it's a hard one to undertake.
Well, this is a debate, and I appreciate. I now it's Patrick who's shaking his head as well. So, Patrick, I'm going to give you a chance to answer to some of Tom's points.
My good friend Tom Davidoff consistently ignores that urban land is not the same as bananas. So it's not a commodity that is the same. It has natural limits, and also ignored in that long response is the fact that in the city of Vancouver, on most parcels, the land value is almost 10 times greater than the building value. So the real impediment to building affordable homes is not the cost of the structure. Doing prefab housing is not going to do anything when our land costs over $600 per buildable square foot, which is much less than the cost of construction. So that's essentially a red herring. And Tom Davidoff, with great respect, and many others in his school and throughout North America, are ignoring the problem of land price inflation. That the more the city develops and the more active their entrepreneurs and their work and the wage earners are, the higher goes the price of land. In technical terms, it's called land rent. And unless we really confront the fact that the market is inflating the value of our land, and our government is also inflating the value of our land by a false supposition that it's just a supply problem in the terms that Tom Davidoff just presented, we are not going to solve this problem.
Tom, Patrick was just making some comments and disagreeing with your thoughts about the price of land being a major factor here. What do you say to some of his points?
Well, he's certainly correct that the thing that's scarce in Greater Vancouver is land, and buildable land in particular. Look outside. I mean, this is just a fantastic place to live. We're all so lucky to live here. I hope we can build more homes so that we can let more people live here and enjoy the wonderful place that we have. But why is land expensive? Number one, of course, is the demand. People really want to live here, and so prices are high. That's always going to be true. The question is, how bad is the affordability problem going to be? And then we don't have enough land, right? You could cut off the tops of the mountains and fill in the water to add more land, but we certainly don't want to do that for a variety of reasons. So what can we do to lower the price of land? Well, we could make ourselves a worse city. Patrick mentioned employment growth, right? We could, tax ourselves to death. We could have a lousy government like a lot of places do, and that would make land less valuable. But the other thing we can do is allow people to build more on land. Why is land valuable? Because when you own land, you have the right to build housing, and that housing is valuable. And the higher the price of homes, the more valuable is the right to build on land. So what do? We make more buildable land by allowing land to be subdivided into more and more units to build to greater and greater density. Look at Point Grey Road, or look at anywhere on the west side. What gets built? Maybe a duplex, but very commonly it's single family homes, little buildings just oozing with capital because it's such great land that the market wants to add lots and lots of capital. But you're not allowed to build big, tall apartment buildings, which is what should happen to the land. Instead, you have to build these little houses, so you overwhelm the land, with granite countertops and, glass boxy windows, what have you, right? That is an expression of how great the land is, and we've seen so much of the West Side rebuilt to absurdly low density given the value of the land. Low density zoning is an amazing policy that exists throughout Canada that manages to both be inefficient economically. Of course, you want to put more capital where the land is the most valuable. So it's bad for, just total wealth of the country. to have single family zoning. And on top of that, it's regressive, because who wins with single family zoning are the people who get artificial discounts on the land that's value is blocked by impeding how much can get built, and who can afford expensive homes. So it's regressive. It takes money from everybody else and gives it to the super rich. It's like the world's worst policy. And, if Patrick believes that building more homes won't reduce values or the value of land or the right of the people to build, that just says there's an even bigger argument to build. It's more wasteful. If building more homes won't lower the value of housing, that means we should build more and more and more. Now, Patrick and I agree that if you create a lot of value by allowing people to build, it's reasonable to extract some of that value with development fees. Then you can grab lots of cash and do something useful with it, such as solving our horrendous homelessness problem or our addiction problem.
Well, when you talk about development fees, it also comes back to who is building the homes. What do you make of the federal government's approach, or certainly promises in the election campaign, that the federal government becomes developer with this Build Canada Homes promise? Patrick?
Well, they haven't identified whether or not that's going to be a subsidy to private development or they're going to be government developers. So I can't really answer that question, but I can push back on what Tom Davidoff had just said. The fact of the matter is that Tom doesn't acknowledge is that we have, in fact, triple density in this city. We are almost the world's best experiment for adding new density to existing neighborhoods. Tom's argument is that, well, do more of that. We've been doing that for 50 years, and what we've seen as an empirical, not a theoretical, consequence of that is the inflation of land prices. So land is where the opportunity is. It's like Jesse James said, why do you rob banks? And he says, well, that's because where the money is. The money is in the land. So our tax policies and our development policies have the capacity, without breaking our necks with new legislation, to actually insist on affordability as in return for an agreement to new density. If you don't do that, that new density only inflates the price of the land such that the per square foot buildable cost, no matter how high the building goes, is roughly the same. You don't escape land costs by going tall. We've learned that in the city of Vancouver. You simply don't escape land cost or dilute it by putting another story or two on the building.
Patrick, Tom, I'm looking at the clock here, and I'd like to get some form of resolution here. I don't say agreement. I mean resolution. If you had the ear of the housing minister, and you may, with Gregor Robertson as our housing minister now, a minute to each of you, what would be your advice to Gregor Robertson? Tom Davidoff?
Yeah, so I would really twist the arms of municipalities. As Patrick said, you can create a lot of value by allowing greater density. So let's capture that value in the form of desperately needed housing and possibly some development charges that can be used to solve our intractable problems of homelessness and addiction that are more tractable with the money. So that's number one. Do that. Don't spend money much on subsidies. The other thing I would say is housing should be market housing. New housing should not be affordable. The role of new housing is to add housing units and to capture the top of demand. It is very expensive to try and make new housing the way you're going to house people with low incomes. There's just too much demand for housing that you can make the most expensive housing in the best locations the place where you create opportunity for low-income households.
I'm going to have to cut in there.
Capture value, and provide cash subsidies and needed services to.
We really are down to our final minute now. I've got a hard out here, Patrick Condon.
I'll try to be really short. I agree that with Tom that there is an opportunity to use development taxes or planning procedures in order to capture land value, and I think we should aggressively do that. And we can do that with our existing zoning policy, and we've done that successfully in the city of Vancouver in the past by capturing land lift. So in conclusion, I think that at least 50% of new housing can be financed by capturing land value and could be affordable for people making normal wages. throughout the future. We've done it in the past and we can do it in the future. The trick is not to get rid of zoning or get rid of development taxes, which are called red tape. The better way to do that is to actually use those more effectively as public policy.
Thank you both very, very much. We've covered a lot of ground in this discussion. We appreciate your time and your expertise. Patrick Condon, Tom Davidoff, thank you.
Thank you, Gloria.
Tom Davidoff is Associate Professor at Sauder School of Business. Patrick Condon, Professor of Urban Design at UBC. And if you would like to weigh in, we'd love to hear from you on the coast at cbc.ca. Can Canada build its way out of a housing crisis? What are your particular stories about housing, the choices you make in search of secure housing today?